based in East Dulwich in South East London. We're part of a multi-academy trust. We have quite a high percentage of pupil premium children. So we've got 47.8 children on pupil premium. We've got 319 children. So we're actually struggling to get bumped on seats, as is the case in most Southwark schools. Very diverse school, very representative of the area. So you've got a mixture of middle class, working class, some refugee families. To children, you talk to parents, and even as teachers, sometimes we do have our unconscious bias, and we just go straight to, the image of that scientist you've always seen, and you have to kind of check yourself and go, well, actually, no. And as a school, we've been doing a lot of work on unconscious bias. So you have to, think back and go, actually, there are other people. One of the famous scientists, Marie Curie, and we forget about her, or we will probably think of someone else, but she was a scientist too. Why don't we talk about her? And it is hard because sometimes maybe that person isn't directly linked to what you're teaching, but you would still need to mention them, as well with scientists who are disabled as well. Someone like the late Professor Hawkins say, hello, here's someone else, despite his physical limitations. He had a very powerful brain and was still able to achieve so much in the world of science. So I say little by little, we're trying as much as possible to ensure that our children see a wide variety in our teaching when we have visitors come in, and we direct them down those routes so that they can see that science is for everyone. Science, it's again, unfortunately, because of COVID, so Science Week in 2020 wasn't great because it was all online based, so it was quite a hard one to do. And then last year we were able to get people in, and it just reignited that passion in children. Having some sessions we did have online, but having like your experiments. And just going around, because that was my first year science lead, organising Science Week, and just going around and talking to children. And it was so fantastic that weeks and months later, that inspiration carried on, where children were saying, well, oh, miss, when I was at home with my parents, we did such and such an experiment, or did you know that this and this happened? And you think, well, that's really lovely to hear. And it continues. So in the forms of things like we have gardening club. So looking at, children learning to grow plants from seeds or from offcuts or what have you. So it's science, but as an after-school club. So those systems are in place for those children. It's due to our teaching in class, but then opening it up to parents and volunteers who have that specialism or that enjoyment of science, and getting them involved as well, helping us to engage our children and say, well, how do you feel about running a club? And that really helps. So it's not just coming from us as a school, that needs that community involvement as well. We had a really good science week last week. So having the lady come from the Royal Institution, who we work with, we run programs with them. It was all about forces. And the sessions were for children from year one, key stage 1, up to upper key stage 2, obviously differentiated for those children. But again, that was something where, when you're looking at forces, because it's physics, physics is quite a hard concept for children to get, but it was made so accessible for these children, and they were involved as well. So there was a lot of audience participation. And sometimes you think with these activities, you think, oh, the kids will just remember for 5 minutes. But weeks later, you'd ask them about these questions, about that event, and they could remember. And then they started to relate it to things they'd seen in their own life, in their own little bubbles. And it was just nice for them to connect the dots. And they go, oh, well, I'm using this force to do this. And you think, oh, it's stuck. but that was just so wonderful to see, and I'm hoping that we'll have similar success this year. I'd say don't limit yourself at all, and you'll be pleasantly surprised by what your children know, what they will tell you, the responses. I think embrace everything. Try as much as possible to plan in advance. Obviously, it's not been easy to do that in the last 2 years, but as much as you can. If you can't get someone on the list, as it were, to come in and run a workshop, tap into your parents. There's bound to be somebody. It might not necessarily be a parent who is a scientist or works in those fields, but they will probably know someone who's willing to come in. Look to your community as well and say, right, we're sending out the word. Is there someone who works in this particular field, or is there someone who's absolutely brilliant with plants? Would you like to come in and help us?